I'll just give them one more minute. We'll start at 10:02. I didn't prepare anything for some airtime here, but it shouldn't be too long and we'll get started. Maybe next time I'll come up with a joke. Happy to see many of you are chatting. Videos on or off? Off, please, unless you really want to share with everyone. It doesn't matter to me, but I think mostly everybody has their videos off. Thanks for asking, Chris. Okay, it's 10:02. I'm going to go ahead and start the recording. I guess we've already started that. Is that right, Samantha?
Yes, that's right. I started it.
Okay,
so
great.
We're good to go.
Thank you so much. All right. Let's move on to our meeting. So welcome everyone. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Susan Leach Murray. I'm your host and organizer for today's meeting, the State Documents Collaborative Group's second online meeting. And what I do, I manage the Arizona State Publications collection here at the State of Arizona Research Library located in Phoenix, Indiana. Or excuse me, Phoenix, Arizona. Sorry. I'm just today. I hope healthy and coping well amid this current COVID-19 situation and its impact on both our personal and professional lives. The situation was definitely not what I'd expected us to be at for the spring meeting. But I am hoping that as a group, this can act as a place and a point of contact for support should you need it. I think I can speak for the group that if anyone is struggling, please feel free to reach out to your colleagues here, and I'm sure we would be happy to assist or just listen if need be. If you have any technical issues, I have a couple of work colleagues, but specifically my work colleague Brittany Harris will be available to assist. She will be monitoring the chat to make sure I have not missed anything. So let's go ahead and get started here. And the screen that you see is basically today's kind of outline of the hour-long meeting here. So hopefully the topic and presentation part of it will take up most of our meeting time. I have an announcement for the group. I only have one today, and at the end here, after I discuss this, we'll open up in case anybody else has an announcement. The State Documents Collaborative Group is now an official affiliate member of GODART. I was informed of this designation from Suzanne Caro, the current GODART chair, last week, and it was approved. For those of you who may not be familiar with GODART, GODART is a part of ALA, the American Library Association, as the Government Documents Roundtable. And I will have Brittany put a link to the GODART information page. So in case there are others out there that just aren't familiar or you want to refamiliarize yourself with GODART, you can do that. So what does this affiliation mean for us? The first thing I want to point out is we do not have to become individual members of GODART. However, I would suggest that you may want to consider becoming a member. I am a personal member, and I've been so for a few years. And I was able to attend 2 virtual ALA GODART midwinter meetings earlier this year. One was for the State and Local Documents Group, and the other was for the Rare and Endangered Government Publications Committee. I think there may be ways that we could collaborate with these particular committees and maybe others as we think about our role moving forward. The second part of our membership as the official member, affiliate member, it allows us to use GODART's Zoom account for our online meetings. So that was a big plus for us becoming an affiliate member. And we also have a place to archive our meeting information. Now, currently, those details have yet to be worked out, but I intend to work on that for this group. So please stay tuned for more information about that as that is developed. And I didn't see if Suzanne was here today. She is not, that I can see in the participant lists. That is the only announcement I have today, but I wanted to touch on one more thing about applying for this particular type of membership with GoDart. And let me pull up the next screen. So as I was preparing to submit this request to GoDart to become an affiliate member, I had to submit two statements. One was a mission statement and one was a membership statement. And some of you may have recalled back in, I think it was late February, before I started this process, I had asked for some quick input about a mission statement for our group. And on the screen is the actual mission statement and membership statement that I submitted. So for those of you who may be on the phone, our mission statement reads, to provide an all-inclusive, collaborative environment in order to raise awareness, preserve, and ensure public access to state and local documents. The second statement that I submitted was our membership statement, and it reads, our membership is open to government information professionals and other interested parties. I hear a little bit of feedback, sorry. Think about those two statements, and at the end of our meeting today, as we wrap up, I'm going to ask you to officially approve or not for our group those two statements at the end of the meeting. So will refer back to those when we get to the end of the meeting. At this point in time, I wanted to pause and see if there was anyone out there that had any other announcements they would like to make at this time. Please go ahead if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, or you're having some technical difficulty, let us know. I noticed in the chat there was some comments about the GoDart. It says the state and local folks have put together several really great resources like the state agency database, and there is a link provided in the chat. I'm actually authored the one for Arizona. And yes, Jenny, there is a concern about the status of the roundtable. I think many of us are aware of that particular situation. Okay, I don't see any hands at this point, and I've been trying to follow the chat. So, okay, let's move on to the topic of today. So after I consulted with another state publications liaison and considering the major impact of COVID-19 to our personal lives and our professional lives, I would like to kind of prioritize our meeting discussion on the coronavirus and how we're all managing, planning, coping. Are we having issues? And we begin a discussion on our original meeting, which was suggestions on how to promote our state documents collection, increasing use and awareness. We'll also go ahead and do that as well. So who would like to go ahead, and does anyone like to speak? Do anyone have any questions or comments? Anything that you'd like to be addressed at this time?
Hi, this is Karen Kitchens from the Wyoming State Library.
Hey, Karen.
Hi, my question is, how is everyone continuing their contact with state agencies as far as publication submission, etc., or outreach during the time of working at home or closures, etc.?
Would anybody like to comment?
Hi, this is Jay in Oregon. Can you hear me? Doesn't sound like it.
Go ahead, Jay. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. For us, because practically everything we do is born digital, it hasn't had a big impact. And I actually think I might be getting slightly more prompt responses from state agencies when I email them for clarification about something because they're home and they don't have as many distractions.
That's great. Anyone else like to comment or have other questions about the question? Chris asks, are any of you engaged in web archiving efforts, in particular of COVID-19 sites? I will say, Chris, this is Susan, that the collection that I have, typically our focus is not on the web archiving part. That is actually done more by the archive staff. I know they have been very active in just archiving the websites for state agencies in general, but that's a great question to ask, and I'm not sure what they are doing, if anything different. Kathy says, from the State Library of Pennsylvania has people trying to harvest pages. Each librarian is given an agency or two to cover a page about COVID-19 right on our page. Very good. Jay says, from State Library of Oregon, we're only archiving actual publications about COVID-19, but not whole websites. Sheila from South Carolina State Library, our building is closed and our staff is working from home. No physical publications are being accepted, but we are getting documents through our email and web crawler. We do not do web archiving. I'm sorry, we do not do web archiving, only docs. Archives does web archiving for South Carolina. Karen Kitchen, same in Wyoming. We are not archiving web page. Rick Fitzgerald from the Library of Congress. National Library of Medicine, I think he's referring to. NLM has a collection here and he's put a link in the chat. Andy, late announcement from the GODART Cataloging Committee. The GODART Cataloging Committee welcomes volunteers to help content for its LibGuides, and there also is a link there in the chat. Contact Andrea Morrison, and Andrea's email is in the chat. And Jenny says, Connecticut Archives Constitutional Officers website. I don't know if the people who do this, they also do other agencies. And Rick has actually put a URL in for IIPC. Another response, we do archive state publications in Wyoming, so we've got all of the governor's executive orders regarding COVID-19. And yes, in Arizona, we have been accumulating those quite quickly these days. It seems at least, if not every day, every other day, there's a new one coming out. Rick says, we are going after state health departments right now. That's probably a good idea. Char from Utah. In Utah, we are only collecting publications for our digital library. I believe that's what the DL abbreviation means. The rest goes to the archive. Chris says, we at UC Libraries in Stanford work our state library and state archives to manage the web archiving, and we are working on a California.gov COVID-19. Well, it seems like a lot of us have really stepped up in this situation and being sure that we collect and document to preserve that information for future reference. Yes, Karen, I agree. Good idea on focusing health departments. Jenny says, oh, Connecticut archives all publications from agencies, but not all websites. We've done that for years. And Chris also comments about working on a Bay Area government COVID-19 web archive as well. Krista from North Carolina works with our state archives and capture whole websites and social media. We just finished up our planned crawl of these sites, but we'll be looking at what was collected to see if we need to crawl it again. Yes, and Chris talks about how the scope to collect Maine County, city websites, public health, water districts, school districts, and social services websites. Would anybody else would like to speak? Or you can unmute yourself, or we can continue on in the chat as well. Are there other questions or concerns people have?
Oh, this is Karen again.
Sure.
Yeah, we do. Let me clarify what I said. We always collect publications, just not the websites. So
Gotcha.
if there's a particular publication regarding COVID, say a health department, then we will in fact get that. So there you go.
Thank you for that clarification. So I know many of us are working from home, myself included. I have an outside project working with a vendor, so I've been coming into the office 2 days a week to keep that project going. And for the near future, I guess that's still possible to do, but I was just curious how people are transferring to more of a remote type of work. I was speaking to a work colleague this morning, and when I do work from home, this is Susan, by the way, it seems like I get a lot more done because I don't have the interruptions, and I seem to be more tired than normal, even though I work 4 10-hour days. And I was just wondering how people were adapting to their new workflow.
Susan, this is Brandy.
Yes, Brandy.
So I work with Susan at the State of Arizona Research Library, and I am having a completely different experience than you are. I feel much more rested because I don't have the stress of driving into work and particularly driving home, which the commute is way worse here in Phoenix in the evening. And I find that we are eating better because A, we can't go out, and B, it's easier for me to cook dinner, for example, when I just roll into the next room than having to spend 40 minutes in the car getting frustrated, then wanting to just decompress when I get home, and then that decompression turns into 3 hours of Netflix. So I find that I'm much more rested because I have eliminated the actual commute time, and also feel much more efficient in what I'm doing in my house because there are many fewer meetings and many fewer interruptions.
I would agree with you, the efficiency and the less interruptions, definitely, Brandy. I noticed in the chat, Carmen says that we have a lot of IT restrictions on working from home devices, so we're rather limited in what we can do. We have a state pub staff and does have full work access right now. Kelly in Nevada says that she was adapting well, more time to catalog the state pub's backlog and catch up on other projects. I'm doing a mix of office while practicing social distancing and work from home. Andy says our Hartford Community College librarians are participating in online reference chats from home. I'm helping with that. Jenny from Connecticut says, I was just allowed to telecommute, work laptop locked up. My personal laptop died, just bought a new one and went out. I'm sorry, missed that one. Bought a new one and we'll pick up later today. Great, Jenny. Chris says, +1, I have a 2-hour commute each way, so definitely having no daily commute has made the workday a bit easier, just as Brandy had discussed as well. Kathy says the county where I am on full lockdown, but I went out for pickup pizza. Sometimes you just got to get out. Sheila from South Carolina says, really enjoying working from home. Agree, less stress, much can be done online, lots of opportunity for webinars, Zoom meetings, catching up on checks. Abby states that the Wyoming State Library Information Services team meets every other day in Google Hangouts. All but 2 to 3 of us are teleworking. I feel more exhausted too. I think it's not the knowing what changes will happen next or when it will go back to normal, so always being on. I, as the manager, always have what they need and are doing okay and staying healthy. Char from Utah says most of the office is telecommuting with daily check-ins via Hangouts, but I continue to commute to the office because of IT restrictions. My entire day is now a mishmash of webinars, online meetings, and now I feel I get less things done because I have to check things for those not in the office, and we're coping with earthquake aftershocks. I do remember that. Oh, man. Chris from Illinois, Northeastern Illinois University is doing online reference and instruction. He's in tech services and involved with consortial transition to Alma, which is not being delayed. Oh my. Karen says she misses her colleagues. Jenny says, I have a very premature baby and had to isolate for almost 2 years. This is a little hard. I sent my son to stay with his retired dad because he is high risk. I'm not so productive. Jenny, I think we definitely understand your tiredness and how hard it can be. Kathy Hale says we opened up one of our databases for work from home and got 500 new applications for state library cards. I guess that's awesome. There are some positives and definitely negatives with what's going on around us. The Jay at State Library of Oregon says, I miss occasionally running around in the stacks dealing with the physical collection and also miss my daily bicycle commute. I walk around the block at least 3 times a day. Our transition to telework went really easily, except for the 3 days last week that our home Wi-Fi router died. Oh no. Yeah, I think we're definitely finding out the technological limits and some of the impact that has on us whenever a lot of people are trying to work from home. Eric from the Louisiana State Library says, my situation in Louisiana is similar to Carmen's. We have IT restrictions that do not allow everyone full access to our server. Collecting digital docs, however, watching lots of webinars and working on my reports. Yes, Chris, truly testing our bandwidths on multiple levels. And I guess I can say for the Arizona State Research Library here, we were kind of ahead of the curve since we were pretty active in making sure that most of our staff had whether it was a laptop or an iPad and those types of things. So we kind of had that going into this before this all started, but we're reading some of your responses. I would really congratulate our IT team to make sure we were able to work from home as at all possible, because we can do that. So that's been great for us. Carmen says, Washington State Library, I've been watching the state docs here from the help. I'm an accidental government information librarian, WEMRS, which has been very interesting. Great, Carmen. Yeah, I think webinars is also something I tend to watch when I try to break up some of the monotonous work that I've been doing, especially some metadata cleanup in our catalog system. Is there anyone else that has more comments or more questions? Any concerns? How can we help? Oh, Char asks that, does anyone have a link to the accidental government information webinars? We'll see if we can get that information, Char. Karen Kids says too, true, Wyoming IT folks worked fast and furious to get so many of us telecommuting. And Char, I think Eric was able to put in the chat the URL to that particular series. And Carmen as well has added. Do we have any other questions that you would like to ask your colleagues?
Hi, this is Karen again.
Sure.
Hi, is anyone are you still doing some kind of outreach to your agencies, even if it's remotely? You know, That was my question.
Okay. So Karen asked about, is anyone still doing outreach to the agencies? If so, how are you doing that? Has that changed from what you're doing before? Are you doing something new? Or has it stopped altogether? What's been your experience?
Hi, Susan. This is Krista from
Sure.
North Carolina. So we normally cannot work from home. So the move to working from home was not really seamless for us. A lot of us who work with the state agencies and the publications that we get in, we live locally, so we were able to like keep going into the office for a little while, but now everyone's working from home. But because we have those restrictions, we're in a way limited to what we can do, and we're testing out new workflows for how to get stuff in. I think our digital or liaison to the state agencies, to answer Karen's question, is still doing what she normally does, which is looks on their websites to see what's up there, emails them, keeps track of her lists, and checks in as to what is out there and looks for it. But we're just sort of collecting what we normally do, and if we get it in a digital format, it's creating more of a backlog for us, and as we try and work out a new workflow. So I guess to also add on to Karen's question of like, what kind of outreach are you doing? But for those who do have more of a digital work environment already set up, what is that looking like for you? Is it that you just have some kind of VPN access or other remote access to your workspaces, and so it was pretty seamless, or is it some other approach that is out there? Because I'd be curious to know what those environments kind of look like for everyone.
I'll speak to that first. This is Susan. I can say that because of our VPN access, it has seemed pretty seamless for us because we can get to the information that we need for state publications, and maybe Brittany, my work colleague, or any others may comment on that. So I haven't seen that different of approach for me, but that's just for me. And I notice in some of the chat, Jen says, I don't handle that, so I cannot comment, but Connecticut governor wants as many of us to work from home, except working from home requires meeting strict restrictions and a lot of paperwork. Carmen says, I am also concerned about the size of the backlog for when we can return to normal work. Karen comments again, I just don't want agencies to forget about our services and our state pubs online databases. Jay says we have a VPN and remote desktop, so it looks exactly like what we have at work, and I can concur the same for me here at Arizona. Karen also says Wyoming has VPN access. Char from Utah, VPNs have been a nightmare before COVID, as they did or did not work, depending on their whim. We don't need one to work on the digital library, which is nice, but it hampers other workflows like website access that she knows of. Jenny says, Connecticut State Library, we can only work through MS Teams, but we have not fully migrated to Microsoft. And we are using the same thing here in Arizona, and we're taking full advantage of the Microsoft Teams. We're actually having our department meeting online tomorrow. Sheila from South Carolina says, no real outreach, but in answering any questions from state agencies, mostly everyone in state agencies is working from home. We're still getting documents by email fairly regularly. Samantha in Colorado says Colorado has VPN access, but it can be super slow for managing larger digital files. She's been going in once or twice a week for some digital repository management tasks. And Kathy says we use an electronic bulletin board that we have used before that goes to every Pennsylvania state employee under governor's jurisdiction. And they make sure that there is an article sent to the office administration who controls it. You know, from what I'm hearing in the different questions that we have of how we're handling it, it always amazes me because I think that we are always up to the task of having to adapt to the different changes. And I don't know if that's because of the work that we do or just our profession, but it always amazes me how creative we can get to say, okay, we can't do it this way anymore, so maybe we can figure out a new way. So I'm so glad to hear, even though there are some restrictions for some, that we're pretty creative in figuring out how to do our work and do it the best we can in our situation. James says almost all of our state agencies are working from home, so we have had to change our workflow to monitoring websites and working on backlog. Yeah, that backlog never seems to go away, I don't think. Eric says in Louisiana, we had a devastating ransomware attack in late December, early February at the State Library of Louisiana. So IT was excessively cautious and only upper administration has full VPN access. So it's frustrating, but understandable.
Susan, this is
Yes.
Brandy.
Sure,
I was
go
just
ahead.
going to add to what you had kind of mentioned and the question of how everyone is managing with this. Like Susan mentioned, I guess for me, it's a little surprising that we were ahead of the curve because it feels like Arizona is often behind the curve in things. The first week of March, so before all of this ramped up, we had our monthly staff meeting, and it was discussed at that point that we needed to, as individuals, prepare for the possibility that we would need to start working from home. I don't think we anticipated that everybody was going to get to, but maybe we would cut the staff in half and have half work from home and then half in the office and maybe swap out. So we had about a 2-week head notice to start thinking about the things that we could do from home and how to prepare for that. And that meant that we could take our work laptops and make sure it had all the software on it that we needed. In a Teams group that we have, we all collaborated on links to, here's where you go to download the ILS, here's where you go to download Content DM. So that was helpful for people that maybe didn't know where to find that stuff. One of the things that we started doing before, because we didn't know we were going to have VPN access at that meeting. So we thought we were going to have to make do with what we had at our desks. And we had recently migrated to Office 360, so that had helped, or 365. That helped because then we had access to OneDrive and Teams and our email from home. What I did personally, because I have a lot of digital files I need to get uploaded to our digital library, is I started dumping those onto a jump drive and an external hard drive, knowing that there was a chance that I was going to need to do that stuff from home. And in the 2 weeks leading up to it, I kind of backed off on doing that stuff in the office. I started focusing more on what I could get done in the office before they made the call to switch us to work from home. So I think it helped that we had kind of a team leader that had some heads up. There was a lot of days where we had no idea what was going on, and that was super frustrating and stressful. But once they said it's cool, work from home, I think for us it was pretty seamless. And we do still have people going in 1 or 2 days a week to get those physical things done that need done. And if someone needs something while we're there, then we can help our colleagues out in that way. So I think I'm proud of Arizona for how much we, took charge early on to make sure that when they did make that call, that it was a seamless move for us.
Thanks, Brandy. Well said. I was just going to review some more in the chat. Kathy said, I think that is because librarians, I went up a little bit, and archivists have had to do this kind of work for years. The rest of the world is just catching up. Jenny says, for describing digital collections without my computer, I'm reading Doc on tablet and doing voice to text on phone. Can't wait for computers so I can get back to more efficient. Oh, I hope so soon, Jenny. Karen also says, even though we are at home, we still have the library mission to fulfill. Also, the overall uncertainty is incredibly stressful. Wow, Jenny, that sounds time consuming. Yes, it definitely does. And Jenny responded, Karen, it's faster to do that than to type on tablet too. Small to see or type on phone. I need to do whatever I can to stay home. Any other comments? Char says we're partially open. We house the multi-center for the West for the blind, so that section is still open, though walk-ins are now discouraged. The phones and warehouse are still working and operational, but we are high cleaning alert. Do you have any others that like to chime in? More questions? Eric asks, are others still actively collecting print tangible documents as well as digital documents, even if it's on pause? And Char asks, when did people start preparing for this? Any responses to either of those questions? Karen from Wyoming says, yes, Wyoming collects print. And I also will comment here in Arizona, I do the same at this point in time. Carmen from Washington says, mail is still being received at our library, but not processed. I'm not sure how much is being sent right now. Abby from Wyoming says, in Wyoming, I'm just staking them on Karen's desk until she comes back. Jay says, we're still getting physical documents as they're published. We aren't sending out depository shipments until further notice. Jenny says, I'm happy little circulates in at Connecticut State Library. Yes, Connecticut asks for at least 2 copies of physical documents. Happy if we can get 17 for state doc depositories. Char from Utah says, we're collecting digital, but our physical intake is so low, it's irrelevant at the moment. And Jenny also responds that they are not sending out shipments. Sheila from South Carolina says South Carolina collects physical documents on a regular basis, not getting much right now, but still requests 15 copies of anything published. Wow, that's a lot of copies, Sheila. I have actually pushed Arizona's down to 2. And James Phelps replies, we have 4 of the left. They said we had received some documents. And Suzanne replies, I don't think we are getting anything right now. In Wyoming, they start making lists of projects I could do from home. I think they were replying to, I believe it's Jenny's question about how did you prepare for this and when. In Wyoming, started making lists of projects they could do from home. Once they learned that's what we were going to do, conferred with Karen and Abby to see what needed to be done. Jay says they get 10 copies at State Library of Oregon. Interesting. But depositories and Library of Congress, I see, in South Carolina. Katie says in New Mexico, we're preparing at the end of February. From what I understand, physical documents are still being delivered, though we are not processing those at this time. Jenny comments that her supervisor prefers human readable format, even if published online. She doesn't like chat or online meetings. Kathy in PA says, we are just collecting mail in one big conference room. We started preparing staff about 2 weeks before we were sent home, made lists for all staff. And Jay says they collect 2 copies for them and the rest for our depository library. So that makes sense if you still have a pretty active depository system within your state of why requesting those multiple copies of print. I can say here in Arizona, we do have the system, I guess, skeleton that was set up at one time. And most of the participants are not the number of participants has declined over the years, but it still seems inactive for the universities. Northern Arizona University, Arizona State University, and the University of Arizona in Tucson seem to still be pretty active in the depository program, which I am trying to be more active about those participants and what those look like. I currently do a surplus list, but that is done on a quarterly basis. Let's see what else we have. Oh, Eric from Louisiana says, I've asked agencies to withhold print documents for now, but was concerned about handling or processing them. But just yesterday, this helpful IMLS webinar happened, so I feel better about carefully handling cardboard boxes and print documents when we return on site. And thank you, Eric. He has provided a link to that webinar for us in chat, if anyone is interested. Jenny says that at the Connecticut State Library, how impacted are you? Parts of Connecticut are like suburbs of Manhattan, excuse me. And Karen from Wyoming asks, she says we collect 5 copies of print, 2 for us, 2 for the university, and 1 for the Library of Congress. I guess that would be this is Susan, that would be kind of an interesting, kind of a quick survey to do to see how, what are the numbers of print that other state document collections are actually collecting. I know I'm preparing for the focus to someday that won't be the case of print. It'll all be digital, but we're not there yet. Krista says in North Carolina collects print, at least 2 for our retention and up to 10 for depositories and Library of Congress. Jenny in Connecticut says our archivist said the IMLS webinar was good, but contracted to NEDCC. Sorry, she meant NEDCC, I think. And Kelly says they collect 2 print copies for us and 9 for depositories. This is Susan again. In our Arizona Administrative Code is actually laid out that currently it still says we want 6 print copies. That has not been changed or updated. So sometimes, especially the Department of Economic Security, sometimes we still get those 6 print copies. But they're pretty good about sending to our reports email that collects all the electronic documents. And that's what I definitely promote when I'm talking to state agencies. Carmen asks from Washington, does anyone have suggestions for professional development resources relevant to state docs for those of us with work limitations? Good question, Carmen. And while we're waiting for any response to that question, Chris from Illinois says Illinois has 22 depositories. Not sure how many our state library retains or what they do for the Library of Congress. So back to Carmen's question, does anyone have suggestions for professional development resources relevant to state docs for those of us with work limitations? You can provide links in the chat or if anybody would like to comment. We still have time for open discussion. We have about 10 more minutes before a wrap up. And Katie says for us in New Mexico, we collect 5 print copies, 3 for us, 1 for our state archive, and 1 for Library of Congress. However, we will collect up to 30 copies for our depositories. I like your suggestion, Karen. She suggests we could start a Google Doc for professional development suggestions. We could. Is that something that others would be interested as well? Suzanne said she recently watched a YouTube video on book repair since she does some of that work. Chris says one of the law schools in California has a podcast that I find very useful. He has supplied that link in the chat. And he asked perhaps someone in your state does something similar. Susan says, yeah. Suzanne says, yeah, Google Doc. Carmen, yes. Char in Utah would be interested. Eric would as well. Chris says DLF may also have some good webinars. Jenny comments that she's found state and local docs lack resources. Library schools can't really address since states vary so much. At least in Connecticut, we have no county government. Karen said cataloging webinars would be great. And Chris says there is a Google Doc that ALA put together and she's going to dig up that link. Thanks, Chris. Suzanne asked the question, would anyone be interested in giving a webinar? Have any topic ideas? New Mexico would like a Google Doc. Char makes the quote, why each state is unique but similar. Oh, for a topic idea, I see. The topic idea, Char is asking why each state is unique but similar. And Chris says if you want to give a webinar, maybe consider doing the help series. Chris says, I'm doing one later this month on civic engagement. Is that being recorded, Chris? Is that something you would be willing to share with the group? Yes, great. And Carmen is asking if there is a link to share for registration for that. Oh, and Chris says it's part of the help series. He's doing it for that. So I think if you can find your way to the help series, the registration would be there. That's what I'm getting from Chris's comment. We still have a few more minutes. Any other questions, comments? Suzanne asks, how many libraries have their own classification scheme for state docs? And I can say Arizona has a separate one, but it was based on the SUDOCS classification system. Colorado does, New Mexico does. South Carolina does, Wyoming does. YDocs based on SUDOC. Utah based on LC, but we altered it to fit our own needs. Pennsylvania does based on SUDOCs. State Library of Oregon, we do based on SUDOC, but different enough that SUDOC confuses me. Chris says Illinois has two, one used by Chicago Public Library and one used by NEIU and UIC. I'm assuming that's the University of Chicago. Chris says California has CalDoc. Like I said, Arizona has AZDocs. IA uses Swank. Interesting. And Jenny says Connecticut Docs is agency-based, but everything is decibel numbers. I think I'm going to go back up to the chat. I saw a question, or maybe it was a comment from Andy that said it was suggested to GoDart that there be some kind of cataloging GovDocs webinar, and I have taken it to the GoDart cataloging committee for consideration, but I am curious here what type of things would this group like to see in a cataloging webinar? That's Andy's question. Going back to the classifications, Connecticut Docs is agency-based, but everything is decibel numbers. North Carolina does based on SUDOC. And Chris has posted the registration links for the help series in the chat. Copyright is a suggestion. Suzanne says, I'll poke the GoDart cataloging committee about this. Chris from Illinois says, incidentally, he had been working on a project to collect and analyze state gov documents class schemes. If anyone else is interested, get in touch with me. And Chris has put the email for his contact in the chat. South Carolina is based on a system developed in Florida, but set up for us. It is agency-based. Chris concurs. I have a lot on copyright. Sarah from Oregon made an online game for library school to teach how to class Oregon documents, and she has posted a link in the chat. Jenny suggests subject headings. With so much original cataloging, it's hard on reference librarians like me. Krista from North Carolina says one of our catalogers is working on updating our class schemes while working from home. Any other questions or comments? We have a few more minutes. Jenny asked, does your class scheme use punctuation? Carmen from Washington has commented to Chris that she believes that the GODORT cataloging committee is also collecting state docs class schemes for their cataloging toolbox, but she's not sure where they are in that. So yes, I definitely, I think to look into more of what the GODORT cataloging committee and others may be doing. I'm a big firm believer in not reinventing the wheel, but maybe that's something we can expand upon. Karen says WYDocs, Wyoming, uses punctuation. And Kelly from Nevada says, we use a variation of Swank and it uses punctuation. And Oregon Docs uses punctuation too. Chris has posted free webinars and trainings for academic library workers. Even though it's for academic, there are items of interest group, and he has posted a URL in the chat. Connecticut Docs has no punctuation. It's hard, Jenny says. And he says, I'll have to check with Andrea Morrison on collecting state docs class schemes for our LibGuides. I am the GODORT cataloging committee chair, and that is Andy Crayley. Utah uses punctuation. I think this has been a really good conversation and a way to connect, especially in the time of such upheaval. Not really sure what's going to happen in the future and for how long. Getting back to I don't know what the new normal is going to look like once things kind of have passed. But I do appreciate all of you coming today. So before we conclude the meeting, unless anybody has any other specific question here, Karen asked, any way to get a copy that I can't figure out how to save all these links using my laptop? Yes, Karen, the chat will also be recorded, so we should be able to get those URLs to you. And Andy, thanks for the suggestions on topics for cataloging webinars, collecting them. And yes, Karen, a copy of the chat will be posted with a copy of the recording, so we will definitely get that out of there. Karen says, thank you. So before we conclude, as you recall at the beginning of the meeting, I had talked about the mission and membership statements that I had submitted to GODART in order for us to become an official affiliate member. And if you see on your screen, I have posted again those particular statements, and I'll just repeat for those or anybody who's on the phone. Our mission statement that was submitted says to provide an all-inclusive collaborative environment in order to raise awareness, preserve, and ensure public access to state and local documents. Our mission statement says membership is open to government professionals and other interested parties. So with those two statements, if you would please, before you leave, would you put in the chat, or for anybody who's on the phone, would you let me know your approval or disapproval for both of those statements? A yes means your approval for both statements. A no would be you do not approve for both of those statements. And it looks like there's an overwhelming majority, if not all, that says yes, they approve. Thank you for making that approval. So I'll make sure to document that for the group. Going forward, I will have that written down, so reference for in the future. So for our meeting wrap up, as Karen had asked, and as we will, as always, you will get a post-meeting email that have the meeting recording, and that will also include the information from the chat with all those links and those, so you will have those things. Please feel free to distribute that recording to any and all who would be interested and who couldn't make it today. So far, I think that we will still schedule our next online meeting for the fall of 2020. And having been virtual or online, unless something really happens, I don't foresee that not happening in the fall. And usually about August, I will put out a survey, again, about topics and what I'm going to do. The initial topic about outreach and awareness, I think we're just going to move that to the fall meeting, but I will still ask for any particular topics people would like to talk about. So if you want to talk about those things for in the fall, or you have other ideas, you're more than happy to email me at a time. You don't have to wait till August. So I will leave you with, I guess, the Arizona governor's executive order statement was stay safe, stay healthy, and stay connected. So and I want everybody to know, if they need to, please reach out to any of your colleagues here if you have any questions or concerns, or you just need someone to listen. Until next time, we will see you then.